I know the title seems a bit bold. Like, what am I going to say about peace in the Middle East that hasn't been said? And can it really resolve the issues? We know we're talking about long and deep-rooted hostilities that go back a long time, to the point that many people have no clue even what the root of the tension is, the root of the battles raging in the Middle East. But especially in the last year, it's exploded yet again. And I say yet again because this is recurring. It's a powder keg. It's a combustion chamber. It's just a matter of time. So with war raging in the Middle East, whatever form it takes, Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, Israel being attacked from the north, from the south, from every direction. All of us wonder, is there hope? Can we expect a resolution? And a resolution not just short term, not just eliminating the immediate threat, but long term. So many different attempts have been made, and nothing has worked, nothing has lasted, nothing has taken hold. Many have given up and feel resigned that this is never going to end. It's like sworn enemies that are each other's throats, and that's that. And especially considering that this is not just a few years old or a few decades old. It goes back millennia, yes, centuries and millennia. But I'd like to propose a 4-step peace plan, which takes into account the short term and the long term, symptoms as well as roots. Like it is with any problem, you have to address it from all angles. And I'll use a medical condition as an example. Somebody is suffering from any illness or injury, God forbid, and they're bleeding. So first thing you have to do is stop the bleeding, obviously. You need to address the short term. But that's not enough. Symptoms have to be dealt with, but then you have to get to the root of the issue. And therein lies a major problem, because what is the root of the issue? What is it? Is it territorial? Is it religious? Is it pride? Is it shame? Is it history? Is it Islam versus Judaism? Or they like to call Islam versus Zionism? And how does Christianity fit into that whole picture? And very often, many people avoid getting to the root. And for maybe the obvious reason, because what you see at the outset, you just see death and blood and barbarism and atrocities. And so that alone preoccupies us. What do we do about that? The immediate solution. But that's just putting out a fire, at best. And even that, look how difficult it is to do. I also would like to add that I think we have now a unique opportunity. Besides the fact that everything has come to the forefront, which always is an opportunity because it's not under the carpet. Anti-Semitism, people are speaking their minds, whether we like it or we don't. You have a change of administration in the United States. And in many ways also shifts in Israel itself and its relationship with Iran. Things have been exposed. Till now everything was more threats undercover. Now we've seen things. And we know it's going to come to a head. So just an introduction or two before I get into the actual proposal and understanding the core root of the issues. Even though you may not be able to address the root immediately, and you have to address the symptoms, because when there's an actual war and people are being hurt, obviously you need to address, as I said, you have to stop the bleeding, but you also want to diagnose this person so you can come up with a long-term plan and a sustainable and permanent solution. So let's get to the root for a moment. Actually, anyone reading the Bible sees the roots immediately. It's in these portions that we read in the Bible, in the Torah, these weeks. The story of Abraham and his wife Hagar, with which he gives birth to Yishmael, the progenitor and ancestor of the Arab and later the Muslim world. His wife Sarah, beloved wife Sarah, with whom he gives birth to Isaac, the progenitor and ancestor of the Jewish people. Isaac in turn gives birth to two children, twins, who are two nations within. Rebecca, their mother, is told, you have two nations within you struggling for dominance. One Esav, the progenitor and ancestor of what would become the Western Roman Christian world. And Jacob, the progenitor and ancestor of the Jewish people. And the battles are raging there already. In its infancy, in its root. And they are battles over ideology, over spirituality, over how to integrate higher values into a material world, which has always been the biggest challenge. We all have it within our hearts and souls. I have my need, my selfish needs for survival, for success, self-preservation, sometimes called survival of the fittest. And then there's other people's needs. How do we balance the two? Do we go to war? Do we create some laws of coexistence? And especially when you bring into the picture what Abraham introduced, especially to his family, that we answer to a higher calling. How do you balance the inherent tension between answering to a higher calling and your own needs, especially when there's a clash between the two? And even if you find a resolution, how do you balance it with other people's belief systems? How do we respect individuality? How do we disagree in a humane and civil way and not go to war? These are questions that were addressed by Abraham and by his children, and in most cases ended up in conflict with some forms of resolution. So to bring it back to our times, fast forward, just magnify, amplify those conflicts, and now you have 2.5 billion Christians, the grandchildren of Esav, 1.8 billion Muslims, grandchildren of Yishmael, and around 14.5 million Jews, grandchildren of Isaac and Jacob. Yes, it's taken on many shapes and forms to the point of a hatred that doesn't seem resolvable. But it's interesting, it is connected to religious faith. If you ask a Muslim, even one that will not call themselves a radical Muslim, they have a belief system that they have replaced the chosen people, the Jewish people and the Christians, and God has chosen them. Some want to live in peace with Jews, absolutely, but many say we have to dominate the world. When you read especially Muslim fundamentalist writings, Kitab and others, that's what they preach. And some call for jihad, a holy war. So the mere fact that there's an Israel, doesn't matter whether it's the size of New Jersey or the size of your block, and it's under the control, not of Muslims, is already a desecration. The Jewish people feel, based on the Bible, that this is our promised land, the Holy Land given to us, given to Abraham, given to the Jewish people, and the Arab Muslim world. And I know that not all Arabs are Muslims, not all Muslims are Arabs, have plenty of their own land. Leave us be. Do you want to live here? So Israel has its way of dealing with Arab Israelis, and many say it's quite humane, even more humane than other Arab countries. But I don't want to go into all the details of that right now. So how do you address that issue if it is actually a religious battle, religious wars? And I have to say the Western world, especially the secular Western world, is not interested in hearing about religious wars. They want to believe that that's a thing of the past, of the Middle Ages. But you can't ignore that, because it's not about a territorial thing. People think that everybody have their piece of land. There's a reason that the Arab world rejected the 1948 partition, even though it was a few slivers that were given to the Jews. Because as I said, even 1 inch, when you believe that your holiness should dominate, your mosques should be on every holy site, whether it's the Temple Mount or in Bethlehem or every Christian site, then it doesn't matter how much it is. Yeah, maybe to coexist, some people will say temporarily, let's agree to some, but not necessarily in the hearts and not necessarily by many. That's why it's critical to address the issue that we're all children of God, we're all children of Abraham. And what does God have in mind? What does Abraham have in mind? Especially when you invoke God. Allah Akbar. Allah is great. Is this a war between secularism and religion? Well, Kitab says it is. He feels the Western world, the Christians and the Jews, what they call the crusade, the Zionist crusades conspiracy, is all about decadence of a material world. And Islam is bringing in holiness, godly holiness. So some see it that way. That all we have to keep in mind as we present any type of long and short-term peace. And as I say again, it's critical to understand that real peace is win-win. This isn't about one side winning and one side losing. It's about victory for everyone. That's true and lasting peace. Now, of course, short-term, when you're dealing with an enemy, you can't have both winning, obviously. After the October 7th atrocities, you have to destroy anyone that is ready to destroy you. It's called self-defense. But especially when you talk about the bigger picture, that's where you ultimately want a win-win situation. And like I said before, let's go back to the medical condition. There's 2 aspects. There's the short-term, stop the bleeding, and then there's the intervention necessary to build something bigger. So here are the 4 steps, the peace plan, that take into account both short and long term. We'll begin with the short, stopping the bleeding. So the stopping the bleeding, if you're dealing with someone that is ready to stop the bleeding, then of course you work with them. But if they've demonstrated they're not ready, and furthermore, they're ready to actually draw blood. So in other words, you're dealing with an enemy that's ready to attack you and says, I'll attack you again. Allah, like October 7th, or rockets being shot into Israel, whether it's coming from the Hezbollah, whether it's coming from Iran, wherever it may be. So you're dealing with not just a neutral situation, you're dealing with an active attack on you. So the short term is only one way. Strength. To protect yourself and to eliminate the infection that has entered the body, that is causing the bleeding and causing the injury. Now you always give someone the option, say, you can, if you stop right now and you surrender, and you stop shooting at us, and stop attacking, so then, in a way, the bleeding right that moment has stopped, not yesterday's bleeding or 2 days ago. But at least you have that, but you don't have that situation. They call for a ceasefire. No, a ceasefire means literally stopping the attack. Totally. What was called at the end of World War II, unconditional surrender. In this case, stopping all attacks from any direction, returning the hostages uninjured, the remaining hostages, and just a cessation of all hostilities coming from those that are showing hostility. What do you think Israel will do then? Of course they'll put down their arms. They'll be wary. That's not a ruse and not some type of trick. But that's how you stop bleeding. If not, you declared war on me, someone would attack your home, they're breaking your windows, they're attacking your children, they're attacking your family, what do? There's only one way. It's not because we like it, it's the last resort. Not only do you want to defend yourself, you want to go on the offense to eliminate any further threats. I guarantee it's not a long-term solution, but short-term, step one in the process is stop the negotiations and stop the fake, the diplomacy. Let me make that clear. I'm not saying negotiation is a bad thing, but only a negotiation that leads to a real cessation, not a negotiation where there's a type of moral equivalence between an attacker and a victim. You have grievances? We'll address that afterwards. The first thing, stop the bleeding. And the bleeding is stopped very straightforward. Total ceasefire from one side that has shot the fire. The other side will stop when you stop. Return of the hostages. Surrender, exactly. Are there consequences of what they did? I don't even want to address that. In this step of the peace plan, step one is that type of approach. So either it's done willingly, it's like somebody doesn't want to go to the hospital, or somebody doesn't want to let their bleeding stop. You have to then force them. If they do it willingly, great. If not, absolute with strength, with everything at our disposal, whether it's military, whether it's sanctions to cut off all funding, but in an absolute way, not a halfway and leaving a back door open. Because then that you have the problem. It would be like a conditional surrender to the Germans and the Japanese. It wouldn't work. That's step one. Peace out of strength. However, as we understand, that strength maybe creates a deterrent. If it's done willingly, that would be better. But if it's not, then you could vanquish your enemy. You could destroy Hamas, you could destroy Hezbollah. Some say you can't, because they'll always be the enemy. But let's even assume that you could stop the violence by force, what Israel is trying to do. And if the sanctions are strong enough that Iran stops feeding it, at least for a while. But we all know that's not long term. So we have 3 more steps that are necessary to be addressed. Let's address Iran. You have to always look at the head of the snake. Israel, like it is in all historical military wars, you always look to kill the head of the enemy. That's the best way to stop a war. Could people, not just symbolically, but also militarily and strategically. And that's what they did with Hamas, with Sinwar, with the other leader. Same thing with Hezbollah. Who are the leaders of Iran? So the Ayatollahs, religious leaders. So let's address them. Many say, and I think the consensus is such, that Iran itself, the majority of the people, are actually pro-Western in thinking and don't want any of this. They're being held hostage. So let's address the leadership. Let's not mince words. The leadership have to be given a total ultimatum. This is step 2. This is also part of what we'll call dealing with the symptoms. I'm working my way toward the bigger long-term solutions. And that is an ultimatum. You either stop all hostilities, stop funding, stop feeding, stop attacking, whether it's through proxies or whatever camouflage method, including the threats of building up a nuclear arsenal, or we do it the tough way. We'll eliminate the leadership. And I'm not describing how to eliminate, I'm not a military strategist, but you have to address that because that's where it all starts. Now, if this was a peaceful situation, a neutral situation, of disagreements, we could sit and talk. But we're talking about people who are ready to attack and are just have this irrational hatred that want to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. I understand all the excuses, but that's the bottom line. So that's the ultimatum. So if it's done peacefully, besides the fact that the Iranian people will be relieved, the world will be at peace. If it's not done peacefully, then you have to use every method at your disposal. And as you are in a declaration of war, you don't limit yourself. And you let them make that choice. It's your choice. Remember, when war is declared on you and you make believe that it's not been declared or it's only a half a war, That's the worst mistake you can make. If war has not been declared and there's still hope for peace, it's one thing. But once war has been declared and has been acted on, that's why an attack on a country, on someone's sovereignty, is considered a declaration of war. If one missile from Iran landed in the United States, what would that be called? And especially if there's a threat from war, you have to eliminate it entirely. That's step number 2. The third step is to create peace agreements with all the countries in the Middle East, just like the Abraham Accords did with the Emirates, with Kuwait, Bahrain, I believe it was. Create peace accords, cultural, economic, in every possible way. I understand it's complicated now because of the wars raging. It's not popular. Remember, those countries also are run by monarchs, and they don't want to upset their people because they want to stay in control. Their people, their sentiments are lean, or in most cases are with, unfortunately, either the perpetrators or their victims in Gaza or in Lebanon or wherever it may be. So I understand it's complicated, but that's where you want to work toward. Because in the process, going back to the medical conditions, stopping the bleeding, you also want to strengthen every part of the body that you could strengthen. And then isolate those areas that need more work or they are deeply infected. So whoever is ready to be a partner with Israel in peace, a partner with the United States, a partner with the Western world, absolutely pursue that. Because the gains of that are tremendous. Everyone will see the benefits in it. And that alone begins to develop a longer-term solution, because once you create a peace agreement, then in a sense, not only have you stopped the bleeding, you're actually building together. It may take some time, but imagine the entire region, Saudi Arabia, the other countries. Now, some countries would be more difficult than others, but start with the so-called low-hanging fruit and work your way out. All the countries in the Middle East are at peace with Israel? You tell me what kind of future that holds. Now, that all doesn't mean that there could be disagreements. There are disagreements between allies. And finally, step number 4, which is maybe the single most important, especially in the long term. A re-education of the Muslim world, especially the children in the schools. Who would have believed 80 years ago, when Nazi ideology dominated Germany, which spewed venom and hatred against the Jews and anyone they felt as being unwanted? That's what children were taught. No one would ever have imagined that Germany today would be an ally of Israel and the United States. You know why they are? Because there was unconditional surrender and they changed their education system. It's forbidden to teach Nazi ideology in Germany. That itself is quite amazing. Because you would think maybe the first 10 years after World War II, okay, the Allies had control. But with time, it would gravitate back. That tells us that even the biggest haters, like the Nazis, and the Germans who went along with them, can be transformed. I'm not saying every individual, but it begins from the top in that sense, where the education system, to eliminate the teaching of hatred. Where do you think Sinwars and Osama bin Laden's and other of the haters, where'd they come from? They were once children and they were taught things. Yeah, they may have also lived under some oppression, but they were taught to hate as a result. The Jewish people also lived under oppression, but we didn't learn to hate, and definitely not act on any hatred. So the real revolution, actually, the real war, is not on the battlefield. It's in the minds and hearts and souls of the children. Now, of course, this, steps on the lines where you say, how could you enter into and so-called intrude in another sovereign state's education system? Well, after the blood that has been shed and the wars that have been waged and all that pain that has come out of it, that's part of the process. Now, of course, you want to do it in a kind and loving and inspiring way. This isn't coming to change Islam. It's coming to do to Islam what happened to Christianity, especially starting with the United States. Defanging it. Turning it into a peaceful faith instead of a crusader one that demands violence against the infidels. To teach the most beautiful parts of Islam by all means. And that every human being on earth was created in the divine image, including Jews and Christians and Muslims, of course, and Buddhists and others, and even those that are what some would call non-believers. And show them that in their teachings. In other words, this is not about a secular perspective winning over Islam or other religious perspective. It's showing that true religion, true faith, go back to Abraham. What did Abraham teach? He actually prayed for infidels, for Sodom, the wicked city of Sodom. Teach what their own grandfather taught them. Love, kindness, generosity, virtue, not just to your own, to everyone. And if you meet someone that you feel you disagree with, or you consider to be decadent or corrupt, inspire them, illuminate them. What do you think Abraham did? He lived in a pagan world. They wanted to kill him for his faith and for his belief system. And he continued to teach, and he was persistent, and he prevailed. More than half the world sees Abraham as the father of all nations. I would say the entire world in some way, because the values we all cherish all go back to the Abraham. The biblical Abraham. This is what needs to be taught. And frankly, it should be taught to all people, not just to Muslims and Arabs, to Jews, to Christians, to Buddhists, to everyone, the Western world. The founding fathers of the United States, and I don't want to quote them because I don't want this to be an American campaign. It should be a universal campaign, which I'll address in a moment. But the founding fathers appreciated that. All people are created equal. All men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. All people. Because there's one God, and all of us are part of that God. Any religious person that does not believe that has major distortion in their faith and their religion. Now, of course, this requires a bigger plan. But I laid out 4 points in this 4-step peace plan that if developed properly, you have the ingredients and a formula for true, lasting, and permanent peace. And actually entering into a world, as the prophet says, where there will be no more sword against nation lifting a sword against another nation. Swords will be turned into plowshares. No more evil and destruction. The wolf will lie with the lamb, both figuratively and literally, because it will be a world filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. And finally, what this requires is both a grassroots effort, all of us participating. Today with social media, we can let our voice be heard. Imagine millions, billions of people declaring, this is what we want, pressuring, pushing. And yes, we need to inspire our leaders, or they need to inspire themselves. I hope they're listening to this, because they have a position, a unique position, because they have a prominent role, heads of state, leaders, to share a vision for the future. There's a vision here. It's not just about putting out the fires and stopping the bleeding. There's a vision where Islam rises to its highest point, as does Christianity, as does Judaism, as does all the faiths and all the schools of thought that are based on a higher moral system, and understand the importance of the diversity, but the harmony within diversity. Understand that violence and war and blood and hate does not fit into the equation. This could be taught, but it will require both an effort from below and an effort from above. I mean, the grassroots and leaders. But we can't always wait for the leaders, because they may have political concerns and they may have other stuff that is distracting them. So I laid it out here best of my ability. I hope this does generate and trigger conversation, discussion, even debate. If you have other ideas, better ideas, great. The point here is let's get to a place that we all value, and it's win-win for all of us. I have no doubt that if each of us does our part, and collectively the synergy creates that ripple butterfly effect, we can change the world. I hope my suggestions are taken the way they were intended from the heart, and I hope they have the intended impact. And may we merit, each of us, whatever background we come from, to witness in our time, in our lifetime, this total harmony of a diverse world with diverse beliefs and ideas. I said diverse, they don't have to be divisive. And as a synergy, each of us contributes to the cosmic symphony, the ultimate symphony of entering that age of true divine knowledge, not just the age of information, divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Complete, permanent, and total peace. Shalom. Thank you so much. Simon Jacobson here from meaningfullife.com. It's our website. Please subscribe to our offerings, to our YouTube channel. Please share this, what I would believe is a very powerful and relevant message. And love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, and your ideas. Thank you again.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.
Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Gira musica, gira e non si ferma, come una galla do vento aitta. Attira con narina, tamburello e abbacia come sua figliola. Scattano stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Sinni e tunu, i voti si danno, tu na poco gli bevuti. Sinda affettunu, i cappotti russi e si ricordano da notti buona. Scattamo stanotti, vini come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla.